In a straddle, you are not going to keep the whole credit, okay, because you're probably not going to get pinned right at $75, which is the only place where you get to keep the whole credit. So I just wanted to get that out of the way so that no one's thinking they have any chance of keeping the full $13. You're going to keep a portion of it, and you're going to try your best not to lose a large chunk of it, if not, on a position where you can, where it can be worth more than $13 and you can lose a lot of it. You can lose a lot more of it. So I just want you guys to have the right perspective in mind when you get into this type of trade. Okay. The stock being around $76, you decide to sell 10 of the 75 straddles, and because the stock is not exactly at 75, the straddle is not going to be exactly delta neutral. In fact, because the stock is above 75, your calls are going to be slightly in the money, which means they'll hold the bigger delta. Your puts are going to be slightly out of the money, so they'll have a smaller delta. So this position will take on the delta of the calls. But remember that you sold the calls. So your straddle is going to have a slight short delta. Okay, at inception, it's going to have a slight short delta. This is okay. This is fine. It's okay to have a slight short delta, as you'll see when we move forward in the presentation. We know that being short gamma, if the market goes up, our delta is going to get shorter. We're going to get more and more negative. Okay. If the market goes down, we're going to get longer deltas. In other words, our deltas are going to get more and more positive. That's the nature of being short a straddle. And again, I'm using a short straddle for the purpose of simplicity. Most of you are probably going to use something like an iron butterfly to enter such a to look at such a position. Okay. So on November 19th, the stock price is $75.97. Volatility is about 79%. We think that the volatility is going to come in. As you look at the delta, we go to our broker site to get the Greeks, to get the option Greeks, and we see that the delta of the call is slightly above 50. It's actually 56, and remember that since we sold the calls, we have a negative delta. The 75 puts have a delta of 44, and since we sold those puts, we're going to have a positive delta of we're going to have a positive 44 delta. So the net delta of the position is 12 deltas. Okay, 12 deltas per straddle. If we sell 10 straddles, since deltas are additive, we just have a position that is short 120 delta, and that's fine. Okay, that's fine. It's fine to have that kind of a position. Being short 100 deltas isn't really going to kill you. So we just have to be cognizant of what our position is going to do. We're not trying to make money through the delta. We're trying to make money through a volatility crush and through time decay. Okay, a delta just happens to be a consequence of the trade. And if the stock stays at 76 the whole time, it doesn't matter how big the delta is. It's not going to be a factor. Deltas are only a factor if a stock moves. Okay, so I think everybody's aware of that. So once we know what the Greeks to our position is, and we have our original net delta and gamma, we can move on with our trade. As you get more advanced, or as your positions get bigger, you're going to want to know your vega and theta. Okay, you're going to want to know how much you can expect to make or lose as the volatility changes, and you're going to want to know how much you can expect to make on any given day just through the passing of time. The one thing we're sure of is that time moves forward. So therefore, that's a number that you're basically going to be able to rely on any day. You can still lose money through the other Greeks. But it's one of those things that eventually, as you get more and more sophisticated in your trading, you're going to want to know your vega and theta as well as your delta and gamma. For right now, we're just going to concentrate on the delta and gamma. And our current delta is that we're short 120 deltas, and we are short 40 gamma. Okay. We know a few things. We have an idea of a few things. Typically, when the market collapses, volatility levels tend to increase, and that is not to our advantage. In fact, it is to our disadvantage. As stocks go down, volatility tends to go up. And as the market goes up, volatility levels tend to come down, which would be to our benefit. So therefore, maybe since we have that slant in the way that volatility is going to affect us, maybe it makes sense to keep a slight short delta if possible, kind of like the one that we have, even if the market's running higher, because as the market goes higher, we're going to lose money on our delta, but we're going to make it back, or we're going to make some, if not all of it back, through the crush of the volatility, as you can see from the curve. If the market goes down, the rise in volatility is going to hurt us, and we can hedge ourselves a little bit by holding a slightly short delta position. Okay, this is something that when we had a short gamma position on the trading floor, sometimes we were advised to keep a slight short delta precisely for this reason. Okay, so these techniques actually come from the trading floor, where you have to manage these positions even if you don't want them. Okay. Step number 6, we're deciding to be constantly short the equivalent of 100 shares of stock. That's, based on this position of 10 straddles, we feel that 100 shares is, which is 10% of the total stock. If you look at it from the standpoint of 10 straddles, 10 contracts is equivalent to 1,000 shares. So if you're going to remain short 100 shares of stock, you're really looking at being short, leaning short by about 10% of your total potential position. And it's a reasonable rule of thumb to have in a position where you're looking to make money through short gamma. Obviously, it's not practical to have exactly 100 shares of stock all the time, because it would require trading small quantities of stock over and over and over again, and that's just commission and execution intensive, and it's not what you want to be doing in these positions. So we make a couple of assumptions here. We know that our net short gamma is 40, okay? And what that means is, as the stock moves $1, our delta is going to change by 40, okay, by basically 40 shares. We're looking to make adjustments about every 100 shares. And so the question is, how many dollars does the stock have to move for our delta to change by 100? And the answer is, if our gamma is 40, then if you take 100 shares and you divide by the 40, and you divide by 40 gamma, you come out with a number that's 2.5. What that means is that you're going to be making an adjustment of buying or selling 100 shares of stock roughly every $2.50 that the stock moves. Okay, so this is one of those important slides that you want to make sure that when you get the copy of the slides, you want to make sure you pay attention to this one. If you want to hedge 100 shares at a time, then what you do is you say to yourselves, in order for this position to get more than 100 shares away from me, the stock's going to have to move on average $2.50, either higher or lower than where it is. Okay, so this is where you get your calculation for when and how often you're going to hedge. Step number 8. As if we have permission, as if we're in charge of its permission, we now allow the stock to move. Okay. Notice that the stock did start a little bit higher once we sold the straddle. We're leaning slightly short delta, so this is not good from a delta standpoint, but it is good from the standpoint of volatility and the volatility crush that's going to come in. So even though we're going to lose some money on the delta, we're going to make some of that money back on the volatility effect.